Welcome to the Quilt Addicts Anonymous August Block of the Month. We are in the home stretch. We are almost done with this year's Block of the Month. I'm actually already starting to design next year's, so that's exciting. So keep an eye tuned for that. We'll be releasing that design very soon. So this month's block is not that complicated. We only have one piece unit in the entire 9 patch, so it should go fairly quickly. We're going to start off with some flying geese. We've done this before, but I'll go through the instructions again for you. Let's get started. So the first thing I need to do is I need to draw a line on the wrong side of these green squares. And for a full list of cutting instructions and what fabrics to use where, make sure you go to quiltaddictsanonymous.com and download your free printable instructions to go with this month's pattern. You can just click on the Block of the Month tab, and from there you'll be able to find all the tutorials and download links for all the blocks in this year's quilt. There's 2 more to do here. This is the No Waste Flying Geese unit. If you follow me long, you know that I love this method. I think it's very accurate, and you don't have any wasted fabric at the end that you feel like you should be guilty about throwing it away. Alright, so I've got those, and now I'm going to grab my larger of these dark blue squares. And I'm going to take 2 of these, and I'm going to arrange them in the corners of my larger blue square. And there are full layout diagrams as well in your free printable instructions to go with this month's pattern. Now I've set my sewing machine up to sew a scant 1/4 inch stitch, and I'm going to sew down both sides of this drawn line. Flip that around and go down the other side. Now I'm going to come back over to this cutting surface, and I'm going to go ahead and cut down that drawn line. And it's not super important that you're accurate at this step, but you don't want the seam to be too skinny or it could pop open on the long arm. Now I need to press these open. I'm going to set my seam first, and then I'm going to press the little green triangles away from the larger blue triangle, and I should have something that looks like a heart if I've done this right. Now if you've never done this method before, it looks a little goofy right now, but I promise it works out in the end. So now I'm going to take these other 2 squares that we have, and I'm going to arrange them much like we did the other ones, where the corners meet with these larger blue triangle. And again, we're going to sew a scant 1/4 inch seam down either side of this drawn line. Now if I have my seam allowance in the right place, my needle is going to start and stop right in that little valley where the triangles come together. You'll see a little bit more what I mean when I get a close-up when we cut this apart. But you just want to sew down both sides of that drawn line. So here's what I mean, where this seam line is coming right in this little valley between where this triangle and then the little peak of this square meets. Same thing on the other side. As long as it's coming out right there, then you know you've done this step right. Now again, I want to cut this apart. And here's where you can see how the flying geese unit works out. Because when we fold that back, here we have our flying geese. 2 more steps until we're ready to go. We've got to go ahead and press this good and flat. The flatter you can get it at this step, the better it's going to turn out when we square it up in the next step. So now I have to trim this up to 3.5 inches wide by 2 inches tall. And in a perfect world, everything's going to be a little over. If it's a little under, that's okay. You just don't want to be more than about 1/8 of an inch in either direction. So I'm looking at a couple of things here. I'm making sure that where my 3.5 and my 2 meet on the ruler, that is right at the corner of this, where these fabrics come together. Same thing on this side, except this time it's the edge of the ruler. I'm also making sure that my 1 3/4 is right about above where the point of this is, and that's about 1/4 of an inch in. That'll help make sure all my points end up right where they're supposed to be. So once I've checked all those places, I can go ahead and cut that off and flip it around. This time I want to be right on where I have my 3.5 inch line right on my side and my 2 inch right on the top of the flying geese, because we've already trimmed those, so they're good to go. And then my 45-degree line is right on the seam line, because we want to make sure that this is going to end up being a point. Again, I'm making sure that my point is coming right to the top where the corner is as well. And I didn't trim off too much, but it really looks a heck of a lot better, especially when you compare it to what it looks like before. And you can see how you can get a lot better square blocks when you take the time to trim versus trying to get this in an entire block. So go ahead and trim up all your blocks, and then we'll be back for the next step. So I finished trimming all of my flying geese units, and now it's time to attach it to a rectangle of the same size, so that way we can make the rest of our pieced unit of this block. So I'm just going to flip these right sides together, and I'm going to sew it with the flying geese unit up. And the reason for that is I want to sew until I get to where this X is made by the thread, and then I'm going to sew 1 needle width to the right of where that X is, and that'll get me a perfect point. I'll show you how in the next step. So this is like sewing any rectangle together, just you have to pay a little bit of attention when you get to the center. So I'm going to sew along, and then I kind of slow down a little bit as I get to that center, making sure I'm 1 needle width to the right. Now that might mean that my 1/4 inch isn't absolutely perfect there. I might be a little in, I might come a little out, but it's more important that that point be in the exact spot, because that's what people are going to look at, not if you're a little bit off a little bit in your piecing. You can see what I meant before, where that seam line is just going just to the right of where this X is, and that is what's going to make for your perfect point when we open this up. So we just have a perfect point there, and it's because of the way that it was stitched. So I'm going to go ahead and press this nice and flat with the seam underneath the non-piece rectangle, a lot less resistance there. And now we're ready to grab the rest of our units, which are just plain squares, and get this block together. You can download the assembly diagram that goes with this month's block at quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Just click on the Block of the Month tab and you'll see 2016, and there you can get to all the tutorials and free downloadable patterns to go with this year's quilt. From here, it's just basically like putting a 9 patch together. So you can just, I like to put all my rows together at once, so I'll grab the first 2 here. We don't need that scant 1/4 inch stitch anymore, so go ahead and move it back to a regular 1/4 inch stitch. So those first 2 together. And then I always like to lay it right back where the rest of my block pieces are laid out, so I make sure I put everything back in exactly the right spot. Helps minimize some of the unsewing later, or we'll just call it what it is, ripping your seams out. No one wants to do that. But this is pretty simple from here out. There's no seams to match. We just have to press our block and put it together. So I'll let you go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back once the block is all finished. Well, that's it. This is our August block of the month. It's only 9 inches finished. We are making 8, 4 for the inside of the quilt, and then this goes in the corner of each of our borders. It's really a cute block, pretty simple, goes quick. I know you got a lot going on. Everybody's going back to school, and it's just a busy time of year. Well, thanks so much for following along. Make sure you go to quiltaddictsanonymous.com to get your free printable instructions for this month's block. You can also check out the mini block of the month, which is just 3 months long, and it finishes up this August. There are kits available for this quilt and the mini, and so you can make it in this colorway, or you can download the fabric requirements and pull from your stash. Thanks so much for following along, and happy quilting!